Section 2 of the statute calls for the federal government, in partnership with states, local governments, Indian tribes, and private organizations and individuals, to use measures including financial and technical assistance to foster conditions under which our modern society and our prehistoric and historic resources can exist in productive harmony and fulfill the social, economic, and other requirements of present and future generations.
The National Historic Preservation Act was designed to preserve not only archaeological sites, but also historical buildings, districts, and objects. It was signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson on October 15, 1966. The efforts to create this act was driven by pure patriotism and the desire to protect our artifacts of the past. Historic buildings were often turned into museums to attract tourism and interest. On the right is a picture of Blackbeard's house in Beaufort, North Carolina.
Effects of the National Historic Preservation Act. The National Historic Preservation Act led to major changes in the employment trends in historic preservation fields, meaning employment rate increased in the field of cultural resource management. It set the federal policy for preserving our nation's heritage, mandates the selection of qualified state historic preservation officers. It also establishes advisory councils on historic preservation. It establishes the role of certified local governments also within the state. Establishes the National Register of Historic Places and National Historic Landmarks program. It establishes a federal, state, and federal tribal partnership. And lastly, charges federal agencies with responsible stewardship.
Examples that fall under the National Register of Historic Places include buildings, objects, structures, sites, and districts. A building is a structure created to shelter any form of human activity. An object is a functional material item of cultural, historical, or scientific relevance. A structure is a work that is typically man-made with a high level of pattern and organization. They are often large-scale engineering endeavors. A site is a location of a significant event, a prehistoric or historic occupation, building, and structure, whether standing, ruined, or vanished. Districts is a geographically definable area whose location links any of these following examples. The Farintosh Plantation House in Durham, North Carolina, and Molly Brown's house in Denver, Colorado are both examples of buildings under the National Register of Historic Places. Adams Memorial, which is a grave marker, and the Old Point Loma Lighthouse in San Diego fall under objects and structure examples. The Cabin Creek Battlefield in Oklahoma is an example of a site, and a district example would be the Martin Luther King District in Atlanta, Georgia.
How is something considered to be historically significant? This process is located in Section 106 of the NHPA. The four main steps to this process are identification, eligibility, adverse effects, and consultation. You must identify the APE, or the area of potential effect, and filter it through the criteria of eligibility. It is considered to be historically significant if it relates to a historical event, person of historical significance, it has a distinctive engineering style, or it holds potential to learn from. It's considered to be adversely affected if there are major changes from its original state. If there are changes, you must consult with the ACHP and come to an agreement with them.
The National Historic Preservation Act has been amended multiple times in order to increase the effect of the law and improve specificity to its meaning. In 1976, the First Amendment was passed. It established the Historic Preservation Fund, which provides grants to state historic preservation offices. The 1976 amendment also gave protection to sites that were not under the National Register. The next amendment was passed in 1980. This amendment forced federal agencies to take responsibilities for protection of their land by requiring them to create their own preservation programs. The most recent amendment was passed in 1992. It called for increased protection for the Native American and Native Hawaiian historic sites, and also a more strict confidentiality protocol.